We don't want to rise to the bait, if you will, have a major kinetic attack against Iran, which is what they want, and then stir up even more tension and problems in the Middle East. But at the same time, not let the bully continue to push. So this is something where trying to figure out Iran's intentions and how to deter future attacks like this by making a response hurt. That's the balance.
All eyes remain concerned eyes on the Middle East. Joe Biden is under pressure after the death of 3 Americans in a drone strike in Jordan. Iranian-backed groups are being blamed, and the president says there will be a response. We've been speaking to Jim Townsend. He's a former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, and he told us that it wasn't clear if Iran wanted this attack or if a militia related to them was taking the initiative.
It certainly is one of their militias. It's something that could have been launched by a militia that got lucky strike, and maybe Tehran right now is unhappy with that militia group. Or it's the opposite. It's Tehran wanted this to happen, wanted one of the militia groups to have the shot that it took against that facility. And so that'll shape how we're going to respond. And they're looking into that right now.
And how will this feel in Washington? 3 dead, 3 US personnel dead, a successful hit on a military base. What sort of reaction will that provoke, do you think?
Well, it's going to provoke a big reaction. It already has. On Capitol Hill, particularly the Republicans have come down hard on Biden, calling him a coward. You'll be a coward if you don't hit Iran. This is something that we knew would happen because you have been weak, et cetera, et cetera. So the Republicans certainly are making hay here, but the Democrats as well, and others saying we can't sit back and do nothing or do something that's slight. This is going to call for a bigger reaction. And that's what the Biden planners and his aides are trying to figure out. How do you balance it out? Who did it? What was the intent here? And how can we strike back so that it's felt on the one hand, without on the other hand causing a wider war through an escalation?
And how do you hit Iran? Because there's virtually no possibility of America directly engaged in a conflict with Iran, is there?
How do you hit Iran without causing a conflict there? I don't think Iran wants a conflict. That seems to be the feeling, at least up through the weekend. Again, they're looking into that now. But how you would hit Iran, I think there's a number of different scenarios that over time have been looked at in terms of the Iranian Navy or radar sites. Usually what we do, though, we usually try to hit first and foremost the militia group that fired off those. It was a drone that they sent against that unit. But if that's not seen as enough, they'll have to look for something else. And it might be, instead of hitting Iran, it might be hitting multiple sites or multiple militia groups. There's a number of different options, but each one can come with its own risk in terms of escalation, particularly if they try to do something against Iran. And one more point, it could be too that it's not necessarily a kinetic strike against Iran. It might be a cyber attack.
Yeah.
So there's other ways to attack as well.
It's an interesting notion that how much Tehran want escalation, because on the one hand, you can see why they wouldn't. Equally, when you look around the region, there's Hamas backed by Tehran, there's the Houthis backed by Tehran, there's Hezbollah backed by Tehran. We've seen activity between Iran and Pakistan. It's hard to suggest that Iran is not seeking to cause trouble because there's been so much activity that can be pointed at its door.
You're absolutely right. It feels like they're certainly being the bully in the schoolyard, pushing and pushing and pushing, goading the Americans, goading the West to attack them. And that's the problem. We don't want to rise to the bait, if you will, have a major kinetic attack against Iran, which is what they want, and then stir up even more tension and problems in the Middle East. But at the same time, not let the bully continue to push. So this is something where trying to figure out Iran's intentions and how to deter future attacks like this by making a response hurt. That's the balance. Can you get in? Do you strike Iran? Do you strike other Iranian proxies or militias in such a way that they deter future attacks? Or are you actually doing what they want you to do? They're goading you to do, and it just plays into their hands. It's a tough balance,
Just finally, Jim, how much does the fact that it's an election year play into this in the US? Trump's already called Biden, as you say, coward. He says this only happens because Biden's weakness. We've had Republicans on our program saying that the reason why places like Iran and organizations like Hamas feel emboldened is because Biden is so weak. Well, that adds another pressure, doesn't it, to the administration because it's an election year?
There's certainly that aspect to it. I would like to say that in the past, certainly, in a time like this, it's more of a rally around the flag and their support for the president, Republican and Democrat. Even during an election year, there was a time where the election would be kind of put in the background while the president dealt with an attack. Today, though, your point is well taken. This is something that's going to feature into Republican attacks against Biden. It's going to feature into Biden's decision making on what kind of attack or response do I make, and so it's going to factor in. But I will say this: I think Biden he's an old pro, and he doesn't allow these kinds of things to influence him as much as it might others. So I think what he's going to do is make sure that whatever he does, that he tries not to have an overreaction because of politics, an overreaction that leads to more trouble than otherwise. So I think for Biden, I'll give him credit. I think he's pretty tough on this. He's not going to be bullied by Iranians or bullied by the American political system either. But at the same time, given the state of our politics, you can't say that it won't have any impact at all.
No, everything that happens in geopolitics has got to be looked through the prism of that this is an election year in the UK, but particularly in the US. I think that's Jim Townsend, the former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, responding to this question of what Biden's going to do after 3 Americans were killed in a drone strike in Jordan.